YouTube, what's going on, guys? Good morning. It's a beautiful Sunday morning here, New Jersey, and spring is in full effect. Summer's actually right around the corner. It's the end of April today, and we need to clean this raised bed up. We got to get this thing ready for the planting. I have all my seed starts up and everyone's ready to go. We have maybe a week left here before we plant the gardens out. So the main goal today is to clean this bed up. I'll show you guys what I like to do and what other methods there are, but that I personally have used and gone away from. So without further ado, let's jump right into this thing. Okay, so the objective today is to clean up all the weeds and all the cover crop that's growing in the bed that helped preserve the soil over the winter. Two, we want to lay a fresh layer of nutrients. I have an organic granulated nutrient that I like to use to prep my raised beds. I'll show you that when we get to it. Number three, I want to lay a layer of compost over the whole bed, at least a half an inch of compost. And then number four, I want to spray the straw or a cover crop, which is a clover, and then a straw over that so the clover can grow through the straw. And number four, I want to make sure that we lay our strings. So I don't know if you guys remember from last year, but I do a square foot garden method, and down on the raised beds here, every foot I have a nail. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay string in a grid across the whole garden. So you guys will see that at the end. But all right, let's go ahead. Let's get started. So what we have here is just a variety of different types of weeds. All of them aren't necessarily a bad thing. What I like to do in the winter or the late fall is I lay a cover crop down, which is a crimson clover or white clover, and I put the alfalfa straw over top of that, which is what you can see right over here. So after the winter goes by, all these little weeds seem to germinate, but they're not necessarily a bad thing, and I'll tell you why. Well, for a couple reasons. So what they do is they act as a cover crop, and they really give the soil a purpose, and not just the soil, but all of the life in the soil. So if I pull this back here, I don't know if you guys can see, but there's all types of little bugs and mites and all types of little soil dwelling creatures living right there. Another thing is this keeps the soil really moist. Like, this soil is not dry by any means. It's really good. Most of it's worm castings, peat moss, compost, just from previous years. So we want to protect all that hard work by, giving the soil something to grow in. Or something to grow in the soil, I'm sorry. So that's the, yes, by the surface, it looks like a bunch of weeds, and a lot of friends and family come by like, man, your whole garden is full of weeds. Yes and no, there's a purpose to this stuff, but it served its purpose, and now it's time to clean this bed up and get it ready for the veggies. So I'll show you guys what I like to do. Everything in here is going to stay in here. So it grew out of the soil. I'm going to keep it in the soil by just cutting it back. I'm going to kind of not disturb the soil, but basically remove the plant from the root and just lay it right over. So let's go ahead. I'll show you guys how I do that. So the key is you don't want to disturb the soil. A lot of people will just come and rip the thing right out of the ground. And what that does is it kind of disturbs all the little the root system that this weed had developed and grew down. It helped aerate the soil and grow little tunnels with their roots through the soil. I want all that stuff to stay there and decompose and rot right where it grew, so that a new root can follow it or an earthworm can eat that. I want to keep as much nutrition in the soil without disturbing it as possible. But these weeds just can't stay. Although the bees, I don't know if you could see a little honeybee over there, they do love these little flowers, but that's the purpose why I grew them here. There's more flowers all over the place, so they'll find others. But anyway, so I'll show you guys. I just take the edge of you can use a spade. I use this little Japanese spade here. I forget the name. I think it's like something, I forget. I'll put a link down in the description below for this. But anyway, I'm just coming and I'm just cutting the growth right off of the root. And that's really what I'm doing. I'm leaving the root right down in there, cutting the growth. I'm leaving it right where it is. It'll decompose and rot underneath the compost layer. But that's really it. Just kind of cutting the growth off and moving on. So let's go ahead, let's do this whole bed like that. I'll speed this up for you and we'll move on to the next step. All right, so that cleans it up. That only took a couple minutes, you know, back-breaking work, but not too bad at all. Ran around. What I did was I cut the all the weeds back, like I said I was going to, and then I spread it all the, you know, the cut green material around, so it creates kind of like a green mulch. And that's another word for doing this is called chop and drop. A lot of people on YouTube will use that term when they're trying to build soil and keep nutrition within their closed loop cycle, which is exactly what we're doing here. So all of the weeds that grew in this bed here are now going to be recycled back in by using the all of the biology, the worms, the little mites, the pill bugs, all of those little creatures in the soil. We'll use this as food and break all this stuff down so it becomes more plant available nutrition for the plants that we want to grow, which is awesome in my opinion. I love that, guys. Keeping an organic garden is not terribly hard. Nature kind of figured it out for us. We just have to manage that, and this is one of those things. So yeah, let's move on to the next step. We are going to cover all of this now with some compost, but before we do that, I want to add some granulated nutrition down. I'll show you exactly what that is right now. What we have here is that fertilizer I was telling you about. This is an organic fertilizer. It's called Down to Earth is the company that makes it. And they make so many different types of fertilizers. It's kind of crazy. You can get them on Amazon. I get them at a garden store, local garden store. Amazon sells them, they ship them. They've gotten more expensive, like everything else this last couple months. But you know, if you buy them in these big bags, they'll last you for 3-4 years. Like I got these bags are going on 2 years now, so they're good. But anyway, so what they are is they'll tell you each specific thing. So this one is an all-purpose. I've kind of got into the all-purpose. I like it. It's got everything I need. So this all-purpose fertilizer has a bunch of different blends of organic inputs. They use a lot of different ones. Like they get real specific on their other ones. Like this one is crab meal, for example. It's just crab shell and the byproduct of the crab industry. They just grind it all up. It's great. It's got calcium. It's got magnesium. It's got a bunch of different stuff to it. This one is just oyster shell. This is another good version for calcium, magnesium. This one will last a little bit longer in the soil. I use the all-purpose. The all-purpose just has a bunch of everything in it. You can see it has granulated bits, powdered bits. It smells like kelp. There's a bunch of different things in there. So what I'm going to do is just mix a bunch of this into a 5-gallon bucket and then sprinkle it over the garden. Just integrate all that stuff into that living mulch before we cover it over with compost. So let's go ahead and do this. All right, so I got it all in my bucket here. The reason I put it in the bucket is now I mix it all together and integrate it. So let's go ahead and do that. Also, guys, try not to breathe this stuff. I hold my breath when I do this. Okay, so now what I'm doing here is I'm literally just sprinkling this over the garden. I'm going nice and even, right over everything we just chopped out. Just giving it the good old sprinkle. I go back and forth, make sure it's nice and evenly distributed. And yeah, there's not much to this, so just make sure you don't put it too concentrated in one particular area. You want to make sure it's a nice even blend, and all this stuff will find its way down into the soil. with, once again, the help from our microbe friends and earthworms and all the biology. So yeah, let's just keep on doing this. All right, so I got all that evenly distributed throughout. That's all the granulated nutrients there. So another great thing about this is it's really slow release. So this will, as the crab meal has larger pieces and the all-purpose is tinier pieces, it'll take time for this stuff to break down and actually become plant available. So it'll help feed the garden throughout the entire growing season, along with other amendments like compost teas and things like that. But this is basically the food that we're now going to be working to build the biology to help break down and feed the plants with things like compost and compost teas. So now that this is down, let's give it a spray. We'll get all this kind of worked into the soil a little bit, and then we'll come through and we'll put our compost. So let's do that right now. All right, great. So that's all sprayed down. We got it nice and wet. Keep all the dust down, integrate some of those powders down into the soil. So next step, let's go get some compost. Let's do that now. I'm just gonna go ahead, pause a minute and go ahead and say, holy cow, look at this little orchard here that we planted a couple years ago. It is really blowing up. Peach tree is all flushed out. Plum tree, look at the leaves on that. Beautiful structure we're building. This is the elderberry tree, or bush. Looks nice, needs some work, needs some pruning, haircut. Pear tree, doing amazing. Flowers, I got bees all over this thing. Hopefully we see some fruit on this little guy. We got another peach tree back here. The blueberries are opening up. Got another hole ready for another blueberry. And this is this here is the dream come true. This is the Japanese pear tree, or the Asian pear tree. And man, this is a great one. It looks so healthy, beautiful. This back here, getting a little shade right now, is the apricot. And man, this is gonna be a great, great season. So go ahead guys, hit that thumbs up if you like this type of stuff. Subscribe if you wanna see more from me. I'm gonna be putting out a bunch of videos. I got some long-term projects in the works right now. That'll be exciting for you guys. Hint, hint, has to do with this guy right here, the fig tree. But yeah, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe, and let's keep on going. Okay, so that worked out pretty nicely. I brought 1 scoop of compost. Now I didn't sift this. I usually like to sift it before I bring it to the garden, but I figured it'd just be quicker to just scoop it with the bucket, bring it right into the yard here, dump it on top, and then I'm gonna rake it out and I'll pull I'll sift as I go. Like I'll pull a lot of these big unbroken down sticks, and I'll kind of just toss them to the side for now. But let's see how far this one scoop goes. And what I'm doing, oh man, see, this is why I love to make my own compost, guys. Let me show you what I just found here. Wow. This is what I'm talking about. So look at that. That's an earthworm, guys. Look how big he is. That's a healthy earthworm who's been eating good all winter on that good warm compost. And this is what we're looking for. This is why making your own compost is so great. It attracts all of the local biology. So we're gonna go ahead and put him right back down in there, and we'll cover him right back up with his food and his house. But anyway, all I'm doing here is I'm just gonna go ahead and rake all this stuff, pull out the big chunks of stuff. I mean, there's a little bit of debris that gets into the compost, but we'll do our due diligence, and we're just pulling this right over the bed here. We're just gonna see how far this one scoop gets us and really cover everything up really well. All right, that worked out really nicely. I'm happy with that. I could definitely live with that. So now we're moving right through. So we have, let's just go over. We went through our weeding. We weeded it down, chopped and dropped. Then we added our nutrition over that, our fertilizer, our organic fertilizer. Then we just did our compost. We spread it nice and even, nice around. Did about a ½ inch, maybe in some places 1 inch, but it leveled the bed out really nicely. And now the last step here, or the second to last, is we're gonna lay some clover. We're gonna put some cover crop down for the garden plants to grow along with throughout the growing season. So let's get some cover crop, some crimson clover I'm gonna use. And I'll briefly touch base on why we use crimson clover. Crimson clover is it's a legume in that it fixes nitrogen from carbon in the air to nitrogen into its roots, into little nodules that form around the root system. That's one reason. Once that clover dies, which we will smother it, or it will die in the winter, or however it happens, all that nitrogen in the root system gets released into the soil. So that's one brief explanation. There's a lot of science behind that, a lot of terms that I can't remember, and you probably don't need to know either right now. All you know is that crimson clover fixes nitrogen into the soil. Two is it's a cover crop. Like we were just talking about at the beginning of this video, it'll create a little micro climate, little micro environment for the biology at the soil surface to thrive. It kind of creates a canopy over the soil, protecting it from the hot sun, so that all those worms and roly-polies and things like that can come up right to the surface level, eat the nutrition, eat the little bits of decomposing matter, and bring them down into the soil. So you're just giving the soil a skin, essentially, a layer of protection. So that's why we're going to use a clover. I love it. It looks nice. It's green. It's uniform. It doesn't grow too tall. It doesn't outcompete with your plants, and it actually suppresses weeds. So a lot of good reasons for clover. Let's go ahead and get that spread onto this, and then we'll top it off with our alfalfa. Let's do that. All right. So here's what I have. It's from a company called Outside Pride. I get this from Amazon as well, go figure. It's called Crimson Clover. Now this is the clover that I use. It doesn't come back. It's like a 1-year crop. It goes to flower, and then after flower it wants to set its seed and it dies. So that's really good for this application, because we want it to die, because that'll help it release all that nitrogen I just talked about that's locked up in its roots. So what we're doing here is just sprinkling these seeds around. We're not going crazy. It'll all fill in, it'll find its way, but yeah, we're just generously sprinkling, doing a little sprinkle here. So that's all that's really to it. You don't want to overcomplicate it. Okay, so we got all of the clover seeds down. That's basically what we're looking at here. You can see I got them pretty evenly distributed. And now if you want, you could come through and you can kind of help them into the soil a little bit, the first layer of compost here. I do and I don't sometimes. What I'm going to do is really water them in good, and that'll help. But if you're not going to layer with some kind of a straw or something to go over this to help these germinate, then I would definitely recommend doing this. But like I said, it's not really necessary. The birds might come and take them if you don't, so it's good to just help them into the soil a little bit. So yeah, like I said, this is not a mandatory step, but it'll just help your success if you do it. So I'm gonna come through. Might as well do it while I'm here explaining it, right? All right, good. So let's go ahead and get that last step. Let's do that alfalfa. I'll go ahead and get some pieces, and I'll show you how I kind of distribute that over. Let's do that now. Here's the little bale. I have a couple bales, full bales of this, but for this, we're not going to use too much. We're just creating a small cover for our alfalfa to be protected and to kind of create that micro environment temporarily until the alfalfa, the clover can grow. I'm sorry. We want to keep the clover protected from birds and things like that, and create that micro environment for those that biology to come up. Now, I use alfalfa for a reason. I went over it in previous videos, but what alfalfa does is it harbors a microbe called protozoa. And protozoa, I believe, is a single-celled organism, and it's larger and it's a predator of bacteria. So what it does is it's microscopic like most. It swivels through the soil there, and it eats up all that bacteria that we're adding through our compost and compost teas, and just helps create that cycle that we're looking for. We're trying to cycle nutrients as organic farmers. That's what we're looking to do. So using alfalfa does two things. It's multi-purpose, like most things that we do in the garden. It creates that cover that we're trying to do to protect our clover seeds so they can germinate and sprout. It's holding moisture down by preventing sun from penetrating the layers of compost and soil that we just laid and drying all that stuff out. And it's providing those protozoa bacteria that we really like to see to help cycle our nutrients. So yeah, that's why we're gonna go ahead and just spread a thin layer of this stuff over the top. And also, come on, it helps the garden look good too. It just kind of puts a nice cap over all the work that we just done. It's just that final layer. It looks clean, looks good to go, and everybody loves that, right? I mean, we garden to feed ourselves, but you also want to try to make it look good if you can. At least I do. So yeah, let's go ahead, spread this around. All right, and just like that, it looks like a whole new raised bed garden here. So we have it all covered with the alfalfa straw. I did a light layer. I didn't go crazy. That one little chunk spread this whole thing, minus the end there. I needed to get a little bit more. But yeah, just a nice light layer. At any point, I can move it and still see the compost underneath. All this is doing is, like I said, it's just creating that shade barrier for the crimson clover to germinate, sprout, and grow through. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wet all this down, water it down. It'll flatten it a little bit, and then there's one last step before we can call this ready for to plant, and that is to run the string for the square foot gardening method. So we'll go ahead. Let's wet this down and then do the string. So let's get to it. Okay, guys. So this is the last step here. So what we have is just some mason string. This is just nothing special. You get this from Home Depot for like $2 or $3. What I'm gonna do now is I already have my nails preset from last season of just 1 foot apart, so that we'll end up with 4 square foot or I forget the number, but a number of perfectly square 12 by 12 boxes, and that's what we're gonna plant our garden into. So Yeah, let me go ahead. I'm going to run this string around. I'll show you what it looks like. Oh, and one thing to note, this is not necessary. If you guys wanted to stop right here, if you wanted to just do the first couple steps where you know, you weed your garden, you put some fertilizer in, you add some compost, and then some of a cover crop and a straw, or like a cover over that, you're good to go there. This is really just something that I like to do. It keeps me organized. It's a really good book that I read. It's called The Square Foot Garden. You guys should check that book out if you haven't. But yeah, if you wanted to stop right here, you're good to go. This part is not necessary. This is just a little added benefit. So yeah, let's go ahead and do it. All right, so you can see what's going on here. You can see the grid pattern starting to form here. And I'll tell you, you definitely start to feel like a spider spinning a web once you're doing this for a certain amount of time. And let me show you guys, I'll give you guys a little close-up on exactly what I'm doing with this string here. So as you can see, I have a little nail. It's just a roofing nail. I have them spaced out every square foot, so or every foot 12 inches apart. And what I'm doing with the string here is I'm pulling it. Let me get you guys getting a good angle here. All right, I think you can see that. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling it tight, and then I'm wrapping around this string. Oop, here you go. I'm wrapping around the nail 3 times. Tricky to do with one hand. And then what I'm doing now is I'm bringing it over, and then I'm coming around again on this one foot away. And once I'm nice and tight, I take my string, I kind of give myself some slack, and I just toss it over. Oop, we pulled it loose here. It's tough to do with one hand. But once it's over there, now we walk around to the other side. Here we are. And we do the same thing right here. So that's where we just were. Now this is this nail. Coming around, wrapping it a good 3 times, 4 if you get lucky with it. Okay, it's not as easy with one hand. You kind of need 2 hands to hold it tight and then wrap it around. Okay. Sorry for this camera angle, guys. I know it's a little crazy. I'm by myself today. Come right here, do the same deal. Give us a little slack, toss it over, and then we head over that way. So that's really it. And when you're all done, what you'll be left with is a nice gridded raised bed ready for planting. So I'm gonna finish this up, and then I'll see you in a minute. All right, guys, so that's it. We went through all the steps. We did everything that we had to do in terms of prepping for the bed. We even got the grids for the square foot gardening method in. And yeah, guys, if you have any questions about what I did today, just leave me a comment down below. I'll make sure I get back to you as soon as I can. And we will be looking into the next video to plant this garden bed out. Stay tuned, hit that thumbs up if you like it. And subscribe if you want to see more, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you made it to this part, you get a gold medal.